I think this is a problem for national security. Hey, I am Chuck the bureaucrat, and today I'm going to make the case that the reserve component retirement pension is wildly unfair. I argue that reserve component retirees are hit with a double whammy, maybe even a triple whammy that they may not be able to lay out mathematically, but intuitively they sense, and it discourages service. All right, so in the title of this video, I use the word fair. And those of you who know me know that's kind of one of my trigger words. Fair is just a four-letter word that starts with F, and it's usually the last resort of the loser. So let me be specific here. Let's say you have a regular Army dude and a reserve component guy. And these characters are identical in every way except the regular Army dude is continuously on active duty, and the reserve component guy only does 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks a year. Now remember, a reserve component soldier is paid 1/30th of an active duty soldier's monthly base pay for every battle assembly they perform. Every year, the reserve component guy does 14 days of active duty. That's the 2 weeks. He gets 1 day of travel for a total of 15. Then there's those 2 weekend days a month. That adds up to 24, and each of those weekend days counts as 2 battle assemblies. All told, the reserve component guy gets paid 63 days of base pay. At the same time, the regular Army dude does 12 full months and gets 360 of these days of base pay. Now, you're going to notice that the calendar days worked and the fiscal days paid, they're not exactly identical. The regular Army dude is getting paid by the month, and not every month has 30 days in it. And at the same time, the reserve component guy, well, he's getting paid by the day, but it's not prorated based off of the number of days in a given month. Now, don't get worked up here, because the point is that our reserve component guy gets paid 17.5% as much as his regular Army counterpart. And for the viewer who's reserve or National Guard, and you're starting to get angry because I'm ignoring things like BAS and BAH, I know, but cash is not the point here. I'm just trying to find a fair standard when it comes to pensions, and since pensions are based off of base pay, I'm focusing on base pay. You see, I argue that if 17.5% is the difference between our regular Army dude and our reserve component guy when they're in uniform, you would kind of expect the same thing once they're retired. But newsflash, over his lifetime, the reserve component guy is going to get remarkably less than 17.5% as much as the regular Army guy does. All right, let's do a little backstory on these characters. Suppose their careers are identical. In fact, their lives are going to be identical. They're born on the same day, they join on their 20th birthday, they both reach the rank of E7, and they qualify for a retirement on their 40th birthday. And they're both going to live until their 76th birthday, the average lifespan of an American male. So our regular Army dude is going to get 20 years of service times 2.5 for a 50% multiplier against the average of his highest 3 years of base pay. Meanwhile, our reserve component dude is going to rack up a total of 1,560 retirement points. You're going to notice that that is more than 20 times 63, and the reason is that reserve component soldiers get 15 non-pay retirement points every year. It's just this weird rule that has some even stranger second and third order effects. For retirement purposes, we take the reserve component guy's points, divide them by 360, multiply that by 2.5, and you get 10.8%, which compared to the regular Army dude's 50%, it seems like he's doing a lot better than just a 17.5% difference. Plus, there is this little detail about how the base pay used for reserve retired calculations is actually the years of service at the time when the reserve component guy applies to receive his pension. So when you apply the multiplier to the base pay, the reserve component guy gets a little boost. The monthly pension for our friend here is now 24.5% of the monthly pension that the regular Army dude would get, which, I gotta be honest, seems unreasonably high. But don't worry, this is all going to come crashing down when we look at how much their total pension is over their lifetimes. Ignoring the effect of cost of living, the regular Army dude pulls in $690,000 from age 40 to 60, and another $552,000 from 60 until he finally passes away at age 76. That gives him a total of $1.2 million. Meanwhile, the reserve component guy gets zero pension from age 40 to 60. He's only going to get a pension from age 60 to 76 for a grand total of $135,000. That is 10.9% of the pension that his active duty counterpart gets. So let me be clear. Reserve component pensions are scaled down based off of the number of days of duty that a service member performs. And then they are essentially cut in half because a reserve component person can't receive their pension until age 60. And never mind the reserve component folks who pass away at 62 and collect virtually zero for their years of service. And if you want to get just a little bit angrier, here's something interesting. In 1958, the Supreme Court stated in the United States versus Hooper that those on the retired list are not mere pensioners, but that their salaries are a means derived by Congress to assure their availability and preparedness in future contingencies. That is, regular Army retirees, and particularly those between the ages of 40 and 60, are paid to be ready for recall. And I'm not talking about getting paid when they get recalled. That's an entirely separate issue. They receive some portion of their pension simply because they might be recalled. Now, our reserve component guy, in between that time when he qualifies for a pension and actually starts receiving it, like from age 40 to 60, during that time, he's what's called a gray area retiree. He's most likely assigned to the individual ready reserve. But that means he is subject to the same, or quite frankly, a higher level of recall than his regular Army counterpart. And he has to be prepared for that mobilization with no compensation. So either the reserve component guy is getting massively screwed because he's not getting paid for providing a service to the nation that the regular Army guy is getting paid for, or the Supreme Court is actually wrong and that availability and preparedness, it's actually free. Deep breath. All right, so why even bring this up? I have the nagging suspicion that this disparity between the regular Army pension and the reserve component pension is driving behaviors without actually being well understood by the policymakers. Honestly, I have never heard a reserve component person talk about how the retirement isn't enough to make them stay, but trust me, I have heard plenty of regular Army people say that the only reason they're staying for a couple more years is for the pension. That is, that the regular Army pension serves as a hook to motivate people to stay in service, while among reserve component folks, the pension might not even register as a motivating factor. And if the total Army plan is to actually use all three components in future conflicts, this might be an important point. Anyways, not many of today's reserve component folks got through their whole military career without some kind of global war on terror service. So if you want to see how you can get your pension sooner, watch this video. And you should probably understand the 6-year rule and how you can accidentally forfeit a portion of your pension if you don't request it soon enough. So watch this video.